G'day students, hope you're going well. This is a bit of a shorter week for our Year 10 health. Obviously on Wednesday you have your alternative program, so we're actually going to officially miss one of our 3 classes for this week. So last week was a lot about you doing some research and doing some work and filling in a really extensive version of 2 tables. And for those people that have already uploaded that, and I've added a quick skim through, fantastic effort. I plan on really looking into those and providing you with some individualized feedback on those, as they're going to be really critical for the outcome task next week and also for the SAC in the week after. So officially right now, I'll just let you know, we're obviously finished 2 out of our 3 outcome tasks, okay? And we are all the way down to week 7, so lessons 19 and obviously 21, focusing on human development and no major task happening this week. Next week becomes human development's final week with the 3rd outcome task, and then we're going to have a SAC preparation session and the SAC in the final week of this term. So we've got a lot of stuff that we've got coming up, but this is a sort of a bit of a step back and take a breath week with no outcome task, which is fantastic news in my opinion. So let's flip over and have a bit of a look through. I thought what I might do today is slowly step you through the first few stages and really what should be in your tables that you've uploaded for me. So I think you can do one of 2 things here. You can either continue your notes in your exercise book that you've been taking as we go through this work, or what you could do is you could take that table that you've been working on and you could actually check that the information you've placed in that table is accurate and relevant. So either one of those 2 would be sufficient with this work here. Let's have a little bit of a look through. We want to understand the physical, social, emotional, intellectual developments from birth to late childhood today. I'm going to stop at late childhood and not go through everything. And then on Thursday's class, I'll go through the other stages. Remember that a lot of the learning and the development does happen in younger years. And in those older years, there's less development and learning that is taking place for individuals. So, we went through what the 4 areas are, obviously physical, social, emotional, and intellectual. And I'm just going to leave it paused here for a moment and just remind you a couple of things. Firstly, those physical changes and the physical development, not only is it those things that you see like height, etc., but it's also the stuff that's happening on the inside. So think about it, the size of your heart that is pumping blood around the human body. As your body grows and your muscles become larger and the body surface area becomes larger, the heart itself also grows. So those systems inside the body actually grow. The muscles themselves grow so they can produce more force and strength. In terms of social development, we understand how people's social relationships change and the structures change, but the complexity within development of social aspects is vastly superior as you get through the age groups. Emotional development, remember that this is not always about just being happy all the time. It's about having the idea of awareness of emotions. When should you feel sad? When should you feel angry? And being able to express those emotions in a healthy manner and for the right portions. And finally, the intellectual development. While the intellectual development does actually hit a massive growth in that young sort of adulthood stage, you can think about the things that students are learning in the prep age group compared to what you guys are learning in a year 10 year level. The body's ability to be able to understand language and interpret the knowledge and be able to store in your memory and have this creative side. Some of the presentations that I saw were incredible from the last outcome. And if you think about it, you keep getting, while we're in this remote learning, pieces of information that you need to store in your brain and make sense of. And I proposed to you last lesson to try and use this inferences to take your work to the next level. And not only will we about reading inferences, but it's also about being able to write with inferences. And I challenge you that moving forward. So let's move on here. Don't worry about this student activity. That's from a previous year. I've mentioned a few times, and I thought it was worth creating a slide and actually showing you this slide, that within the development phases, different aspects have relationships with each other. So as somebody is able to socialize, their concept of emotional development will grow also. So as somebody is getting older and they are developing through that early childhood into late childhood, and they're starting to interact with more people and different groups of people, whether it be through school or external social gatherings, the whole concept of how emotions are developed continues to grow. This happens because we experience different people showing emotions in different ways, and we start to understand that's a way I could show that emotion. Or we understand, hang on a minute, that's a way I don't want to display this emotion. And that growth is actually showing development in both the social and the emotional area. So being a good listener in terms of social development means that you can gain intellectual development as well. So let's have a look at this young bubba phase. This is infancy, birth to second year. So in terms of physical development, this is the second fastest period of development within the whole lifespan. The first 2 years of life, physical development is massive. Body proportions change. When babies are born, their heads are massive. And then the bodies and the legs and the arms and everything grows to be proportionate. Birth weight doubles by 6 months. So when a young child is born and they're 3 kilos, by the time they're 6 months old, that child could be 6 or more kilograms. And you think about your body weights now or over the last few years, they wouldn't see a double growth ever again in your lifespan, more than likely. Senses develop. We're starting to understand between birth and that second birthday. What am I hearing? What am I tasting? What am I feeling? And then by the end of that first year, and I know I mentioned this, supporting your own weight, balancing, starting to walk, starting to crawl. And then if you want to start linking to PE, by that second birthday, they should be able to throw and kick, which is starting to really develop those fundamental movement skills. In terms of social development, family is the biggest influence. Yes, they interact with other young ones and they'll hear cries and they'll react with those cries. But family is teaching them so much by looking at facial expressions, listening, and watching actions. So the infant totally is dependent on the parents. What we mean by that is an infant between the ages of 0 to 2 can't produce their own food, provide their own food, make their own food. It's all about what their parents will do for them. And so if you think about it, parents and that social aspect are showing the nurturing aspect, which is something that intellectually is developing through that social lens, which is the interrelationship that we were talking about just before. And it's also helping with physical development, because as that young one between 0 and 2 is consuming, whether it be breast milk, whether it be formula, starting on solid foods, eating their vegetables, consuming water, it gives their body an opportunity to grow. We know that protein plays a massive role in the development of muscles and the growth of muscles. So introducing proteins to young ones in this age group is critical in making sure that their muscles develop in size, but also at the same time keeping up that dairy and that calcium intake to ensure their bones are growing and they're growing strong and healthy. So they're starting to recognize facial expressions around the 6-month phase, and they can smile around the 6-week before that. They enjoy basic games like peekaboo, and as I mentioned, that concept of are they still there or are they not? They enjoy games and they start responding, and the social skills like sharing and taking turns starts to come into play, learning that I do this and then you do this. Quite often in this social development, if we're talking about a younger sibling, they're also learning off their brother or their sister, their older sibling, and that's a real critical aspect in terms of even having a faster physical, emotional, and intellectual development. Different culturally acceptable behaviours and social roles start to develop by watching what is right and also being told as young as 2 years old. And infants can interact more through language as they start to move through to that second birthday. And I can tell you that even through lockdown, my youngest daughter, who's 2.5 years old, at the start of lockdown was using single words or two or three words together, now stringing full sentences together. And that lockdown phase of 10 to 11 weeks has shown a massive growth in her ability to be able to have full conversations. But what we have to understand is, in terms of the intellectual development, she was already understanding the vocabulary that we were using and the gestures that we were pointing to. And she could comprehend what we meant, but she couldn't communicate it. So once that communication had developed, then the social interaction can go like that, super quick. So in terms of emotional development, it's all about the family, obviously. One of the first signs is hurt or distress. You need to understand that babies, especially before that sort of 6-month age, all they can do is cry. And when they cry, they are trying to communicate with us. And when they communicate with us, their only form is to make that squeaking, squawking, crying noise. So that could mean happiness, it could mean sadness, it could mean I need a nappy change, it could mean I am hungry, it could mean I'm just uncomfortable or I am cold. So it's not that babies just cry, babies are trying to communicate with us, but we need to try and understand what their signs and symptoms are so we can really help them out. They start to get emotional attachment at this stage. This is the area where if a mum or a dad or a guardian or a brother or sister has been around an infant from birth to 2 years old for every day of their life, and then all of a sudden they go to childcare or they go to a grandparent's house and their parents, guardians, brother or sister walk out the door to go to a coffee shop or to watch a movie, that crying can instigate because they don't understand where are they going? I've never been without this person in my life. When I wake up in the morning, they're there. When I go to bed at night, they're there, and they're back there the next day. And so they start to express anger, frustration through tantrums and happiness as well. At 12 months, the infant becomes sensitive to their approval from parents. We say, don't do that. And they know that that means I need to stop doing that for one reason or another. Finally, in terms of the intellectual development, all the senses are working and they become more acute, meaning they're accurate and they're small and honed in and refined over time. They collect info by putting objects into their mouth. The most number of receptors compared to any other senses is within the mouth. So by putting objects in the mouth, they can texturize hot, cold, rough, smooth, etc. And they're trying to make sense of that. Within months, they can recognize their name. They can recognize word objects like book or bath or water. And some certain actions come with outcomes, like signaling, come here, come here. They will be able to start moving as soon as they can crawl. But their attention span is short in this phase. So let's move on to the next category. This is early childhood. So this is between 2 and 6 years old. And between 2 and 6 years old, I'm not going to read through every single one of these, but that little body fat or the baby fat starts to really decrease because they're moving around a lot more. Bones and body proportions will change again and lengthen, and that's individualized from person to person based on DNA. But you can see here that height and weight has rough indicators on what it should be doing. Coordination and muscle development means they can do more intricate things rather than walking and balancing, like bicycle ride, etc. And they can start to manipulate small things like buttons, zippers, and holding a pencil. Family remains their primary social contact because it's not until that 5 years old or 6 years old they really start to go to school. So the majority of this age group is spent with family. Playgroups, kindergartens, childcare also starts to help with social development, and independence starts to develop. No, I do it. They want to do things on their own. They start to really see what we're doing as adults and as older brothers and sisters and start to eat with knives and forks. And play is really important to allow that creative side and also self-discovery. So in terms of emotional development, it's quite a fast pace. So during this age, they're really starting to understand what's going on. So if people are upset, they also get upset. They still don't know how to deal with emotions, so violence can come into it, and they're just learning what it means to show that aggression and how to rein it in. But the mood can change quite quickly because they don't have control over their feelings entirely, and they are still trying to develop the sense of their own identity. They're starting to learn language. By the age of 5, a child knows between 1,200 to 1,500 words, and that is massive. And they start to interest. Why? What's going on? Why? How come? You hear it a lot. Attention span lengthens. They can watch TV for a little bit longer or listen to a conversation or a song from start to finish rather than wandering away. And they can start to really learn how to write some basic letters or know what their name is and how to spell that. Moving on through that next category now, you can see between the 6th and the 12th birthday, and this is the last one that I'll look at for today. It's a bit slow and steady with the development, so you won't see big spurts of growth in terms of height, etc., but it will continue to increase at a steady rate, as will body weight. And both sexes of male and female will have similar body shapes until puberty hits, which is around about that 12, 13, 14 years mark. So similar proportions to an adult in terms of their body from top to bottom. And they start to really perform some complex skills. So being able to do more intricate things with a pen, with a pencil, etc., and being able to learn things like even maybe stitching or sewing. In terms of social development, schooling, learning a wide range of social situations and interactions. First time they might be dealing with conflict of somebody of their own age group. Also, relationships at school are generally limited to same sex between this age group, generally, and morals will start to develop about what's right and what's wrong and how do I actually react to those things. In terms of emotional development, controlling and recognizing emotions is starting to become more trial and error, and they're starting to learn a lot more about what's right and what's wrong. Having some different self-conscious feelings, thinking maybe I'm not good enough at this, I need to try harder, and that's where nurturing that side of them can really help with their mental health later on. Finally, in terms of intellectual development, massive amounts of problem solving skills here, reading and writing, and it can grow fast or slow from person to person. Understanding mathematical problems and reasoning, and developing a long-term memory, storytelling, recalling, I remember when this happened, I remember when this happened. What I'm hopeful of is as I take you through from birth to 12 years old and I really start to pinpoint a lot of these things and I've categorized them down, I've given you both milestones and a breakdown of the 4 different development areas from 0 to 12. Now remember, a lot is jam-packed into 0 to 12 and there's less in the older age groups. Through the notes that you've taken today and also your clarification, feel free to re-upload your table if you feel like you added some things or made any modifications or changes. On Thursday's class, I'm going to develop another video for you, which will be around 12 onwards and just giving you a few extra things in those categories. And then there'll be one task for us to complete for this week. I'm making it a bit of an easier week. Listen, take some notes, move at your own pace. 2 out of our 3 lessons we'll actually be doing because of Wednesday's alternative program. Because next week I know we've got our final outcome task and the week after that is the SAC. So a lot happening moving forward. Feel free to email me any questions that you have or show me the notes that you've taken for today. But I hope it's been a nice, easy, relaxing and yet informative lesson for you.